Hello, everyone. This is Doug Camplejohn. Welcome to this episode of Revenue Renegades. This week, I'm incredibly excited to be talking with Manny Medina, formerly of Outreach and now with a brand new company, Paid.ai, who is joining us from London. Welcome, Manny.
Thank you, Doc. Good to see you.
Great to see you. So, I love founding stories. I love founders. You've got a new company. Tell us all about it.
I did. I came to the realization around 250 million that I am a more of a builder than a manager. And that sort of colluded with the fact that my wife really wanted to be closer to Europe. And, there is there's so much to do in this new AI agent world that hasn't even thought through. And I was like, this is probably the right time for me to agree with the board to find somebody else to take over the company and for me to do some big thinking. And when I looked at the problems that you have as an agent company to monetize your agent in such a way that you clear margins and in such a way that it makes sense for the customer and the value that you're providing, I didn't find anything out there that was actually solving that problem. So I found a lot of metering companies. Found a lot of payment companies, a lot of billing companies, but they didn't find anybody like actually solving the problem. And just like we did at Outreach, that was the beginning of the rabbit hole. And then the rabbit hole kept going, and then we kept talking to more people. And as we did more discovery, we found out that they had a number of problems, right? And I think that you have seen that AI agent companies, including your own, are small. They tend to run smaller, tend to run leaner. They tend to use more systems to get their stuff done. And like on the back office, nobody has thought about that and how to solve that problem. So we're like, let's go solve it.
That's awesome. I love it. I'm very excited about that, and you will have launched, and so we'll learn more by the time this episode comes out. Pay.ai will be in the wild. So there's obviously a ton of noise, excitement, whatever you want to call it, around anything agentic right now. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts overall about whether it's agent.ai or crew AI or agent force and all that stuff going on?
The way I think about it is that agents right now are replacing both software and labor. If it's not a full job, at least it's a part of a job, like a role or a function. And you know how those agents go to market, how those agents get built, like what are the fast ways for you to take your knowledge of a particular industry and turn that into agentic behavior. I think it's just accelerating, right? So that's what the frameworks are doing. That's what, Crew and LangChain and Llama Index and all these guys are doing is, the ability for you to easily turn knowledge into agentic behavior and then roll it out to customers. And then on the other hand, like you have the marketplaces that are allowing you to do the same thing, but it gives you a go-to-market outcome too. You see what I mean? So like if you're building on agent.ai, if you're building on agentic force, or even the smaller ones like App Direct or like the other ones that are more like Enzo, for instance. There's this application called Enzo that is a marketplace for agents and for SMBs.
Hmm.
The ability for you to have an audience that is ready for your agents to go and do the work is I think it's key. I think it's magical. So I'm excited.
First, how do you define agent? Because a lot of people kind of seem to be creating if this, if then statements and calling them agents, and it doesn't sound like full agentic behavior to me.
Yeah, I think that the you draw the line as to whether an agent can make decisions on their own without a human intervention. And now you can also make the argument that some agents will check in with you over the
Mhm.
course of the an execution. But I think is a matter of degree. So if an agent has enough freedom to go and innovate in a particular problem and solve it in a way that the agent sees fit, I think that's what we call agentic behavior. I think that where you draw the line is a copilot, you have to constantly prompt them. So if you have to
Mm.
constantly prompt somebody to do something, that is just GPTing. Like that, there's nothing magical to that.
And what do you think about the whole interoperability challenge? I think one of the things I see, it seems like there's a lot of islands that are being created right now, and I think that can limit the opportunities for agents.
I think it's two things. One is you're seeing a Cambrian explosion of agents, and it's mostly because it's sort of like anyone who can code is having a hold my beer moment, right?
Yeah.
Of like, can this be solved? Just hold my beer. Let me go just code it right now, and because it's possible, you're gonna see a lot of these silos, a lot of this like point solutions, just like it happened in SaaS when when both you and I started. Um, I think that out of that is gonna come a sort of like a reckoning of like, what are you solving for, and like how many applications can you really have, how many agents can you really have sold running in the background. So I think there is that behavior. On the other hand, you also have the behavior that there are agents. So I am in the business of making sure that agents get paid, right? Like
Mhm.
that's our job. And we get to talk to hundreds of agent companies over the course of like starting the company and now running it. And what we're seeing right now is like where the bulk of the growth is happening is in vertical agents. So
Mm.
pick any vertical: healthcare, trucking, supply chain, manufacturing, and then pick a very narrow sliver of work that is being done by a ton of humans that is error prone and nobody wants to do it. I think the Y Combinator calls it passing the butter kind of jobs, like when nobody likes to do it and they just keep doing it over and over again. And those are the ones that are getting like heavy agentic deployments. So like there are companies like um, Happy Robot, for instance, that they literally all they do is they call they're they work for brokerages and they call truckers to deliver a load. So you're a CPG company, you're Budweiser delivering beer from Milwaukee to Boston, and you need a truck called in the next 2 hours at the right rate. They spin up 1,000 instances of their agents, call a bunch of truckers, find out who is in that route, books them, argues with each other so they can negotiate between two truckers doing the same thing, and then off you go, and then calls the trucker to ensure that the thing is delivered. Tiny, tiny slice. I didn't say supply chain. I say just brokerage, and
Right.
they do that work. You see what I mean? And like that, you see that in healthcare, you see that in pharmaceuticals, you see that everywhere. So what you're not, what the world is not seeing is this like there's all these green shoots, like like freaking asparagus, like everywhere. You know what I mean? Of like agents coming out and solving a particular problem.
I love those examples, and I think that that kind of niching down of solving a very specific problem is I think just such a great way for someone to get a foothold and get started and start building from there.
100%. No, no, I was gonna say the more interesting question is what's gonna happen to like the ones that are trying to go horizontal, right? Like AI SDRs, like or whatever. Like what's gonna happen to them? Like where do they go from here, right? Like that's a thing that is unclear to me, but you know more about that than I do. Like that's
Well, let's talk about that. You brought up AI SDRs. I mean, speaking of explosion, like I can't count how many have been funded about this recently. Uh, what are your thoughts of maybe AI SDRs in specific and just in general about which categories of work you think are most susceptible or vulnerable to agents taking over?
I think that the AI SDR is still a little bit in copilot mode. I think that when you let it run amok, it's not doing a great service yet at scale. I think that look, having run outreach, right? Like we were the preeminent tool for SDRs, right? Our job was to create engagement between a rep and somebody they don't know or somebody they want to engage with. And engagement is fundamentally a human behavior, right? Like there's some math to it, you do X many to get Y results, and there's no escaping that. But that doesn't mean you have to brute force it. You see what I mean? Like that doesn't mean you have to have 0.2% reply rates, or like be a spam cannon and like just burn through inboxes and domain reputations. I think that that's just the wrong behavior. um and we always advocated doing your research and making sure that there is some amount of relevance in what you do, and that got all mistranslated. Like I don't know if I'm sure you talked to Mark about this, in that
Mhm.
there is personalization and there is relevance. Nobody gives a flying F about personalization. Like nobody cares that you live in California and the weather is nice there. Like nobody cares, right? But everybody cares that you're starting a new company and there's all these solutions for new founders, or like, have you tried this tool to get team management communication if you are, a remote founder? There's other things that require like two levels of the research to find out what could be relevant to you. And I wish that there was more of that in the AISDR world. You see, I mean, that's not quite there yet. We're still in the P times Q business of like, if I spam, 500,000 people, I'm going to get some amount of reply rate that is going to give you some results, as opposed to like, let's put in the work of using research, what I mean, to find out, and A B and true research, like A/B testing research. What I mean? Like you do your research, then you put people in cohorts, you run your cohorts, you figure out what works, and then you scale that. Like it's still nothing done in that world. And I feel like that's the next step for everybody.
So let's switch to outreach a little bit. Obviously, pioneer in the space, you helped a lot of sales teams become more productive. But as you pointed out, a lot of people also used it as a spam cannon, right? So I think that you mentioned Mark Casaglow, your former VP of Sales at Outreach, now the head of operator, who almost describes it as like paying for the sins of the past, right? Like how do you kind of create something more narrow? Um, you obviously had built a general purpose tool on the team there that got used in a various numbers of ways. Can you talk a little bit about um, the different approaches and how do you see outreach evolving?
Yeah, so back to the very beginning, our job was to create to lower the friction of what it took for a rep who is trying to educate the market, right? So like if you think about what a rep is really doing, a rep is taking innovation out to the market and telling the world about it, right? In some instances, some innovation is less well known and some others is more well known. So if something is super well known, you may not need that rep. Marketing is enough and you should shut down that channel, right? In some other instances, like for instance, we were witness to a lot of like, farm tech, a lot of like, agro tech, a lot of tech that did not exist before, like drones and stuff like that, right? Somebody has to call somebody to make them aware that this is happening, right? I mean, there's no channels that are big enough to get this innovation out in the world. So for us, that was our calling, right? Like, how do we make this communication simple and easy? And we didn't have the benefits of LLMs back then, so we tried to guide people with information and education as opposed to like somebody reviewing your emails and being like, "Yeah, this is not gonna work." So, we got really good at educating people, at finding the sort of like the heuristics around like what works for somebody and what doesn't. Uh, we got really good at educating, especially the savvy users about observational experiments, which is, truly A/B testing. Like, how do you observe something and compare it against something else that you're observing to try to narrow down into how things work, and then give people the workflows to say that if you want to penetrate an account, you don't want to take Doug and then just like spam the shit out of him to just like get him to respond. You want to take Doug and the 20 people that work for him because one of them is going to have some nugget of wisdom that you can bring it back to Doug and say, I found this about your team, and use
Hmm.
that as your workflow to break into an account. Like, it's not about just communicating, it's finding information that they don't know about and surprising them, in a very pleasant way. So that's how we set out to build outreach. And what is the future of that is to continue exactly with that mission, but now across the funnel, right? To help people, discover faster ways of closing, and then help people, with faster ways of expanding, and help people with then, faster way to understanding the funnel and like where the opportunities are. But it's using the same thematic of like our goal is to bring the innovation out through the channel of sales and to make sure that we close the loop of funding innovation, right? Like that we're empowering salespeople to get out there to tell the world about what they're doing, and by doing so, getting innovation out in the market. And we're just gonna do it with LLMs now, like just like everybody else is trying to do, and with our unique point of view, which is we came from sales engagement and we own that channel, so we own the channel of having a human communicate to another human about something new.
And speaking of AI, I remember back, I think it was in 2020, you were talking about AI before AI was cool, right? You were,
A hundred
it was,
percent, I
I
think
think,
100%.
it was Kaya was the AI assistant I
Yeah,
think you
yeah,
had.
yeah, yeah. That was
So tell
Kaya.
me a little bit about the vision behind that and, kind of the evolution of that product.
Yeah. So I one of my favorite people, you probably know this guy, Mike Maples. So
Mhm.
Mike
Yeah.
Maples has this vision of like, you find you he funds founders that, they live in the future and they just trying to, and then just happen to be their bodies in the present, but their mind is already in the future. And they're just trying to bring that future forward as fast as you can. So like we're sitting and with this guy Abhi Abhishek, who is now the VP of engineering, and he was telling me how the technology now can be such that we can understand a customer conversation, and within, I think it's 4 microseconds, the time that it takes for an audio signal to get into your brain, you to think about it and you respond. If we can in within that period of time, we can recognize exactly what happened and give a recommendation real time.
Hmm.
to a rep to say, this is the right answer to what you just asked. This is a piece of enablement you just got released. This is a new compete information about what you're asked. This is the pricing for the API. So we were able to dial down by understanding the question being asked, the context of the question, and put that into a completely different channel to be able to, under 4 microseconds, being able to display that to a human being, and making changes in behavior. So that was the aha moment, right? And the moment you have that aha moment, you cannot unsee it, right? Like the future just became one in which the computer tells you what to say, and now you can't help yourself but to just bring the future forward, right? Because in the future, the computer is telling us what to say, and so that's how Kaya was born, literally. Like it was just an obsession on bringing that future forward.
And it feels to me, and this is just maybe I've been a little bit out of the space, but it felt like it was a huge splash at the moment, right?
Yeah,
When you describe what you're telling me what Kaya does, it still feels very cutting edge compared to what I've seen out there. But I'm surprised I haven't heard more about it from other folks. Is that just because it's just kind of blended into the outreach product, or what do you think?
I think it's because, one of my favorite things about category creation, that it needs, in my mind, more work by Lockheed and his team, is
Mm,
category ownership. I think they make it too quick of a jump from creating the category to owning the category. Creating the category is not enough to own it. You have to own it. You have to
mhm.
truly own it with, and again, I'm channeling my inner Lockheed of, like, with, good languaging, but you also need to own it by just being out there all the time and, like, completely telling the stories. So why haven't you heard more of Kaya? Is because, it could be that it's a good enough for you to record the conversation and do everything post facto.
Mm,
That is a fine outcome to most people. But it also could be that, Kaya immediately took off in regulated industries, where
mm,
whatever came out of the rep's mouth was really important. You see what I
mm.
mean?
Interesting.
And Kaya took off in areas where the rep was overloaded with a lot of new products, because, you remember the top 20 products that sold you 80% of what you did last year, and the rest you're not going to remember. But if
Right.
all of a sudden the company shifts priority and you have to sell this other product that you don't remember for them to make their strategic goals, then you have to say it. So those were the sort of like the two very, very strong use cases for us in terms of selling Kaya, because you needed to change behavior at the point of the conversation, not afterwards. So, like, it was not okay for you to get coach after the call. You have to, like, know what to say in the call, otherwise the deal went sideways or you sold the wrong thing. So that was a thing that we didn't put enough emphasis on, and I think it was sort of like my miss of not really owning the category of, live, uh, conversational intelligence as opposed to just conversational intelligence.
Because when you describe it, it feels like you've got the ultimate SE sitting in the call who can
A hundred
actually
percent, a
tell
hundred
you,
percent, a
right,
hundred
right.
percent, a hundred
So,
percent.
um, so let's talk about that market positioning thing because we're referring to Chris Lockhead, our mutual friend here, quite a lot from the category creation. It was, there were multiple massive companies that kind of sprung up around the time of outreach, and it was fascinating when I got to Salesforce. The leadership of Salesforce was unaware of most of them. They've got new shiny toys. So they had like Clary and Outreach
I
and
remember
Gong.
it was you who got him to invest in us. That was
Yeah,
that was the
yeah,
funny thing. Like, you precipitated that meeting where, like, everybody in the meeting was like, "All right, Manny, this is a buy or build conversation. Which one are you gonna be?"
yeah.
And
I
I
didn't make a lot of friends at Salesforce for investing in Outreach. Let me just say, from the high velocity sales team, but that's a conversation
uh,
for more whiskeys on another day. Um,
can't wait.
but tell me a little bit about that dynamic because I mean it seemed like you guys all had your own swim lanes. I mean Clary and kind of the forecasting, Gong and the call and conversation intelligence. You guys in the sales engagement space, and then as you, I don't know whether you kind of started to see the growth slow down or what happened, but you all seem to kind of go like this and point at each other and say let's go. We're going to expand, and now speaking of that kind of owning messaging, it feels to me as an outsider very similar between the three companies when I go and read the messaging. So tell me a little bit about the thought process of how does outreach compare to those others, and where do you see the future?
So I can't opine on the messaging right now because I've been, I've not being
Right.
an executive for a while now. So, I do think there is very strong points of differentiation, and I think that there is, Outreach has a point of view that is very unique. I think. Look, so let me tell you a story, which I think is more relevant to your question. Like all these guys were friends. Like Amit
Mhm.
and Andy and I, like we hang out all the time, and we were happily splitting the world and like colluding, not colluding, but like trying to figure out how do we make this a really good business for the three of us.
Right.
I think what happened over time is that um, I think what happened over time is that for businesses like Clary, they needed a smoother place of entry. So
Mhm.
they went and bought, what did they buy? Um,
I can't remember the name of the company,
Chris
but yeah,
Chris's company.
yeah, yeah.
So they bought an outreach competitor that was mostly or only Salesforce. It was a sort of like a sequencing product, but just for Salesforce.
Mhm.
Um, and that's fine. Like a girl gotta do what's a girl gotta do. So like he bought that thing to help him juice up growth, and to some degree allowed him to change his messaging to say now we're a platform, which is fine. Um, I think where the real competitor was at that point for both of us was Gong. It's the fact that
Mhm.
we came up with this insight around real time conversational intelligence, and Gong was trying to figure out how to become stickier than just landing a cold recording, especially because you see a lot of bottom players coming out and trying to take that market too.
Mhm.
And Gong is not particularly cheap, right? So they have to add stuff to justify their prices. So I think it's just the inevitability of like creating a compound company that solves more than one problem. And I think it's a more fundamental question if I were to step back. I think the more fundamental question is that it's a really hard life to live in the world of workflows. I
Mhm.
think at some point you have to own a record that matters to a lot of people.
Right.
And I think we all saw that. We all saw that the fact that, working in workflows is great and that will get you to 100, 250, whatever, $1 million in AR. But at some point, if you want to be a big, transcendental company, you have to own a record that matters to management. And that's where we all moved, right? We all had
Mhm.
to own the record. Um, Two things happened, like both CRM got pulled from both sides. Like on the one hand, like they were forced to dump their data into Snowflake and into Databricks. So now for all intents and purposes, you can just data share all
Mhm.
your CRM data, and then the activity doesn't happen on CRM anymore. It happens somewhere else.
Right.
So like that leaves a gap of like what is your system of record. So for us, it's like the system of record is in the activities and making sure that you understand how your buyers are buying. And that's where we're going still. Like I think that the market is still undefined. This is why you see Salesforce like dropping agentic force and all this other stuff to like
Mhm.
try to prop up, this massive investments in becoming a system of record. But I don't know where this ends. I just know that you have to own a record to be viable.
It is a fascinating conversation because I remember talking to Mark about this and saying, listen, and specifically calling out, the three that we mentioned here, Clarigong and Outreach. And I said, these are all $100 million plus companies that are basically trying to relegate Salesforce to be a dumb database in the back end, right? And they're not at a point in that roadmap where I think anybody's ripping out Salesforce. But the value of Salesforce, if you basically turn it into a database, an Oracle database in the back end, and there's almost no engagement with the user interface, the writing's on the wall of where that goes over time.
Right. And so this is what is interesting is because you're seeing Clarity's position in being like, oh, when you run outreach or you run shadow CRM. But I'm like, I mean, that's because you can't. Because the moment you would, you could. It's like the moment you could, you would. You know what I mean? Like everybody wants to run it. It's not a shadow CRM. It's just it's a proper system of record. Like you're
Right.
you're trying to become that place where people come and check on things, and that's just it. You sort of try to stay away from the steaming, like fighting Salesforce is like a steamroller, right? Like it comes in one direction, and you're just trying to stay away from it. And I think the one that should have, you know, the one that should have been Salesforce's business is running their own forecasting. Like
Yeah.
Jesus, like if
Yeah.
you're gonna do something on Salesforce, it's fucking forecasting out of all things.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the engagement stuff, you can say like whatever, that's gonna pass, it's a fad, but like forecasting has got to be. And like so I'm surprised that this thing didn't happen sooner. Wasn't that your
That's
business, dog? I think that was your business.
that was my business. Yeah, I ran Sales Cloud. I have to say, I have tremendous respect for Mark and the team there. It's a brilliant sales and marketing company, and brilliant corporate development. I mean, John Samorjai and team are world class in terms of corporate development. They have so much technical debt. It's really hard. I mean, I
Mm,
got in there and we actually looked at Clary and said, is this a buy versus build kind of thing? And it's too close to the iron is the challenge for someone like
mm,
Salesforce. So I tried to do very simple things like just saying like you couldn't do inline editing for most fields. I was like, can we just do inline editing rather than
yeah,
having to
yeah,
click
yeah,
an
yeah,
edit
yeah.
button and have 27 tabs open in my browser? Or could I do a simple compare? And some of those features shipped started when I began at Salesforce and shipped 6 months after I left. It took, a year and
Yeah.
a half, 2 years for that kind of, minor innovation to happen. So I think
You know what was really interesting though is that we bought sort of like the set like the very beginning of a forecasting product that we bought Canopy, right, and then we integrated
Mhm.
Canopy,
Right.
and Canopy was fresh code, all new tech. It was great, but one of the things that we found that, and because of that you end up selling to like the most advanced users, right, like the ones who live in the future, like to Maple's point, and they want to do like magical stuff. So we our first few customers for forecasting was people who were like already super advanced. And you know what I found out is that forecasting has a whole opportunity to be redefined from scratch. Because what does everybody want? So like you want the roll up from your bottoms up. Like, every AE needs to underbook and roll it up and like have a forecast. That goes to a manager, to a director, to a VP. So what it does is like creates this like trees of like it's like a multiverse tree of
Mhm.
like different ways in which this could end up, right? And what every CRO that I talked to wanted is like the ability to find from those like that world of potential universes that is going to be your forecast, the one that you think is going to be the most, and then apply your own wisdom to it. And like that doesn't exist yet. Just think about that shit. Like it doesn't like and to me it's a massive opportunity. Like nobody's building it because it sounds kind of hard. But I think with the LLMs and new technology and vibe coding, I think that somebody should be able to build it.
Yeah, I think natural language is the interface of the future.
A hundred
Is the
percent. 100%.
And I think that if you could almost just capture the conversations that a CRO has with their RevOps team, or the questions that come up in the board meeting that they don't have a slide for, right? What you really want is
Right.
a system where I can just type that in and get those answers out.
Right, right. It's interesting because a lot of the questions are the counterfactuals. What if this didn't happen? Like, what would have happened? Like, of what if this happened? What would have happened? And like that requires like heavy AI. Like, not only the LLM, which is good at languaging, but the other stuff that is good at researching and like digging through the data and doing compute stuff. And I think that that's the future. I think I'm so excited that somebody's going to build this at some point. So hopefully somebody listening to this takes some inspiration and go build it.
So let's
Make
talk
make
about
you
that a
an
little bit.
advisor.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Give me some shares. Um, so thinking back to Kaya 2020, pre ChatGPT, very innovative, still innovative, as you describe it. But we're obviously in a different era of AI now. Like everything is, got AI thrown on like a seasoning. How do you see when you're looking forward? How do you see AI really reshaping the sales funnel, the CRO role, the go to market? Let's leave it open.
I think that it will make the job of a salesperson a lot more scientific. A lot less, gunslingy. This is how I close my deals, because your buyer is going to have a lot more knowledge about you than ever did before. Because that young whippersnapper that just showed up and got handed their book of business is going to be able to have all their AI tools at their disposal. So I think it's going to separate it's going to part the waters. So rep wise, it's going to part the waters between those who are facile and used to AI and like for instance, I don't do anything without running it by Claude, writing
Yeah.
wise. I just don't like it because it's a waste of time. Like why? Like I put some semblance of thoughts and then I tell Claude to iterate. So I'm sure that there's other people who are doing the same thing with like communication and emails and even meeting preps. You see
Mhm.
what I mean? Like so that's number one. Number two, it's gonna wipe out a lot of this, point solutions out there that are doing all sorts of things because they're just getting as the general purpose GPTs or LLMs develop the ability to store memory. They should be able to ingest a lot of information around your deals. Like it's just a small step for you to just point them to all your Kaya calls, ingest them all, and then just give your recommendations that are good for you and good for the customer. to do research, right? So I think a lot of these changes. So you're gonna need a lot fewer reps. That's the short of
Hmm.
it to hit the same amount of revenue. So that's one. Um, I think the other one is that CROs are gonna have to get really savvy, really really savvy. Like having a team of people running your bathwater to figure out what your board deck is. I think those days are over.
Hmm.
You need to, like, I was just listening to the CEO of HubSpot. I was talking about how she has her own like arsenal of things that she prompts around to like do anything in her life, and I think that's what makes her, such an exciting executive, is that she's able to use the technology in her own blood, and in her own flesh and blood, as opposed to like talk about it and then go ask some kid to run it for you because you don't have the time and you're busy watching ESPN and CNBC and tracking the markets. So I feel like this world is made for the people who are ready to be adventurous and grow, and that's gonna. And I'm not saying this as a derogatory point, but there's a lot of CROs there who just got 2 3 years with them and they don't want to change, and I think they're gonna be out sooner than they think.
Yeah, I think there's kind of anyone in almost any position. I think there's ones who are leveraging AI and those who are going to be out of a job, right?
Yeah. But
I
then
mean,
there's also the exciting, and so let's talk about the positive side. I also very excited about the CROs, or like the conversation that I had with this one CRO, this president who like, pushed the boundaries of what is possible with forecasting. And
mhm.
I think that there's going to be a lot of CROs who are going to be visionaries about what their world looks like. And for all those companies out there who are good listeners and have good tech and are able to respond quickly to what the market, to what is possible in the market, I think the world is going to be an awesome place for them.
I've never been more excited, and I've got a lot of gray hair, but I've never been more excited about what's
You
happening
look
right now.
good. You look good, brother. Dude, you went
You
through
too,
two
brother.
acquisitions and you look amazing. So, like, I know you got a lot in the tank in there.
Yeah, there you go. So let's talk a little bit. Let's go back to the early days of outreach and kind of lessons. So if I recall, like you guys pivoted from like was it like near shutdown? I don't know how close you guys came to like hitting the wall to a
2 months.
$1 billion. 2 months. 2 months. Okay. So for the founders who are facing these kind of existential crises, or kind of in a similar position, what lessons or what recommendations do you have from them? Because you turned it around in a spectacular way.
Appreciate that. Nothing speaks to you like revenue, like
Hmm.
cash revenue. I don't know if you know this. You probably don't because I haven't been public about this. But like the first almost year of outreach, you know how much most companies run their company on an accrual basis.
Hmm.
We run it on a cash basis. They don't even teach you that shit in B school because
Yeah.
nobody does it. Running a company on a cash basis, it's like running a drug cartel. It's like running a corner. You know what I mean? Everybody gets paid the moment cash flows in, and the only thing that
Mhm.
counts is cash. Revenue doesn't get recognized. Contracts don't mean shit. It's only cash. And what it simplifies things quite a bit. You know what I mean? Like exactly the company's position and what you need to go do because cash needs to come in and then cash needs to go out, and then you know where your expenses are. So I think that the thing that I took away, and now with the benefit of being away from it, is focusing. Is constraints help you with your focus, and where you focus your attention, that's where your intention goes and where your energy goes. And
Mhm.
if your focus is do or die, you're gonna go do, and you're gonna make sure that you don't die, and like you'll do everything in your power to ensure that. And that is that there is no better distraction remover than having the chance of death being on the other side of failure. So you really make it happen, and we figure out ways to sell stuff. I mean, a little bit like the Airbnb story where they made
The cereal
cereal
boxes. Yeah.
boxes to get through the spot. It's the same thing for us. Like we became appointment setters to get through the
Mhm.
spot. It's just like I couldn't scale that business, and most people were like, what are you using to appointment set? Why are you so successful? And I said, well, I built this engine that you know personalizes and follows up, and they were like, I want to buy that. Then the question is, how do you build that while not losing, while making cash? You know.
I love that. I remember talking to the CEO of Mailchimp early days, and it was a similar kind of story to what you just described, which was, they were running a design agency and they were trying to do this, kind of email campaigns for clients, and they kind of built this tool, and everybody kind of said, "I want that," right? And
Right,
they
right,
sold
right, right, right,
that
right.
company, and flash forward to a fantastic exit with no venture capital raised in that process. So
100%.
yeah, amazing. So tell me a little bit about your leadership style. I mean, what I love in following you and knowing you for a number of years is kind of you're very transparent and vulnerable, is what I've seen from the outside.
Yeah.
Just tell me about how do you think about your role as CEO, and how does that impact kind of the decisions for hiring, retention, firing people even? Yeah.
Yeah. The best rubric that I have, I actually copy it from General McChrystal, who wrote Team of Teams, which is fairly well read book. And he compares leadership to there's two types of leadership. Like you're like the leader who's in the front and like going and hunting and like doing it first and like rah, and or you can be a gardener in which your job is to make sure that the plants that are in the ground and are growing have soil and water, and they don't have weeds around them that is sapping the resources from them. And as a second time founder at this point, like I am more of that gardener, where I go, I try to assemble the smallest team possible. I'm a big believer in small teams now, and make sure that they have all the resources they need to be successful. Now, there's a point in which you have to set vision, right? You have to say, this is where we're going. This is the big goal. Is everybody in agreement with that? And that goal better be aligned with your customer's pain. Like you better have a constant ear to the customer and spend a lot of time with them. But the thing that I learned between outreach and now in this new company is that has to be something there has to be a set of disciplines and expectations from everyone in the company. So, for instance, at this point, everyone in the company talks to customers. It doesn't matter if you are an engineer and your time is better spent coding. No, we're gonna have an allocation for you to go and pick up a customer. You're gonna own that customer. You're gonna run the customer. You're gonna be successful for that customer. And that customer, if they have some support call, they may just call you directly, and that's cool.
That's awesome.
And so it's a little bit of both. It's like, having a strong ethos around like what is the minimum bar that are non-negotiables, and then making sure that people are have the space to be successful at what they do.
I had someone once describe to me that the job of CEO is MVP, and it doesn't stand for most valuable player. It stands for money, vision, and people. And I almost think about those in reverse. So anytime I feel like I've got too much going on, like I always revert to those three. I'm like, okay, do I have the right people on the bus and off the bus?
Yeah,
Do I have, could everybody, is the vision clear? Does everybody kind of know where we're going?
yeah,
And I'm kind of removing obstacles to that. And then obviously don't run out of money.
right. But the thing, so this is what's really interesting is because look, you have raised a ton of capital. You know everybody in Silicon Valley. So like raising for you is probably not that hard. Like if you have a good idea, a good concept, people will be like, yeah, he can execute. He's done it before. He's sold before. So like money is really not like out of all the things that are critical,
Right,
probably not that hard. You see what I mean? The things that are hard is finding and keeping the right people. So that is
right.
super important, right? Vision is probably once a year, maybe every once, twice a year activity. So even then, like, is not the critical day to day. Like, you don't wake up and be like, what's my vision? Like, that vision is logged. The part that is the hardest in my mind is like, are the right people working on the right things in the most aligned possible way so that you are a sharp spear as opposed to a loose chain of shit? You see what I mean? That's what I found is the most difficult part is this alignment and impact.
Yeah, I think that speed of execution, it really is, you think about a rowing team, like you went to Harvard, the Harvard rowing team. If one guy is going this way while everybody else is pulling backwards,
Yeah,
the whole thing is going to get screwed up. So it's
yeah,
how do you A, make sure you've got the right people on that boat, and
yeah,
how do you make sure that everybody understands what their role is and how they're
yeah.
running? And you're right, that is job one for
Yeah,
sure.
if you read that, I don't know if you read this book, The Boys on the Boat, or watch the movie or whatever. Like the book devotes a fair amount of time because they pick up this burly like Norwegian or like Scandinavian kids out of like Eastern Washington, right? They're all like big and powerful, right? Like and they can do whatever, but they cannot synchronize their oars. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
that it slows them down tremendously compared to like all these other like flimsy rich kids who are beating them. But the
Yeah.
moment that they found a way to synchronize their oars into the water, all the way to all the way to winning a medal. Yeah, and so like it's such a heartening book for exactly that alignment.
All right, that just got added to my reading list. Thank you.
It's an amazing book. Like it's yeah. Anyway, like
So speaking of kind of journeys, you've had a very interesting life journey, right? Growing up in Ecuador, and I've mentioned, kind of going to Harvard. Thank you for not talking about that, like many Harvard graduates right away. Uh, but
That's the
just
thing they tell you not to ever bring it up. So I don't bring it up. I try to keep people. Hopefully they'll forget about it, and then
what is
we can move
the
on.
joke? If you're a CrossFit vegan that went to Harvard, what do you talk about first? Right? Yeah, I understand.
That's amazing.
So tell me a little bit though about how's that personal journey just kind of influenced your kind of leadership philosophy?
My leadership philosophy doesn't come from the schooling that I went to. Like at Harvard, the thing that I tell you at Harvard is that the hardest thing in leadership is the loneliness that you
Hmm.
suffer when you're making a decision. Most of the decisions are locked in your brain, and there's very few people you can confide. And they literally tell you like, I'm sorry, but you choose a path, and that path sucks. So good luck with that. And that's the last words coming out of people's mouth at school is that. It's like if you don't like that path, do something else. But that path is awful, and you choose. So what I try to do is try to figure out how to make it suck a little bit less, right? Like how to find people that give me energy, so it doesn't have to suck as much because we can all carry the load. How to find a partner in my life that gives me energy with whom I can talk about some of those things, like for the longest time, like it's going home and opening a bottle of red and sitting down with my wife and debriefing the day has been like one of the most important aspects of my routine. Um, and one of the things that impacted me the most was when I had the good fortune of becoming the top startup in the M12 portfolio back when it started,
Hmm.
and that earned me a fireside chat, a fireside with Satya, and then so I sat with Satya in the green room and we talk about things, and I came with Satya prepared with a ton of questions about leadership, just like you're asking me, and what do you do in these places, um, and he told me something very profound. He told me, look, Manny, like the things that you're due right now are because life took you in those directions that made you who you are. And there is no counterfactual to it because life is very path dependent, meaning you are here because of all the mistakes and successes that you made on your way here. So your journey is not the school or the experiences, is the choices that you made and the results of those choices that made you who you are. So like even at this company, I'm making choices based on my learnings at Outreach. And at Outreach, I made the choices based on my learnings at Microsoft and Amazon and so forth. So I think us learners, just like you open up by saying like, why, I ask you why you're doing this, and you say because I'm learning. I'm like, us learners do that, right? We're constantly trotting a path from which we can learn and apply it forward.
I think that is a perfect note to finish the core part of the conversation on. That's beautiful. So a few wrap up questions just before we call it. So AI is touching every point of our lives. If you think about it, can be business life as well, but in personal life, let's say if you could just automate one task forever with AI, what would it be?
Oh, scheduling. Like
Hmm.
there hasn't been a true EA yet. Like I love Fixer, I love Blockit, I love Calendly, I love all those guys, but like nothing can manage a sealed calendar in multiple time zones with last minute shit. That doesn't exist yet. I wish that that was taken care of.
I'm right there with you. What is something you're passionate about that might surprise people?
Oh my God, I love grilling with a passion
Uh-huh.
that is undescribable. Like that's how it did. Like that's how I hit my weekend. Like my favorite weekend is there's nothing to do, and all I have to do is fire up those coals and move meat around. Like that sound of the sizzling and me checking in on the bone-in ribeye. Like my blood pressure drops 20 points, and I'm just a better man.
Now, are you a Traeger guy? What's your grill of choice? Yeah.
All right, that's a big question because there's a grill for the purpose and the occasion. So my favorite way to cook is with live fire.
Okay.
So there used to be this grill called Memphis that I had in the US that had an opening where it burned a pellet and it give you 600 degrees Fahrenheit for temperature so you can sear properly and it gives you that smoky taste. Short of that, I prefer the Argentina type grill where you're burning the wood and pooping the coals and then just moving it
Mhm.
up and down. And then I had my own, smoker, stick burner, built it in Oklahoma during COVID. My most precious item in my ownership.
All right, I'm gonna have to come visit you in London and get some
Oh,
get some
my
barbecue
brisket is legendary. Not good, it's legendary.
You heard it here first.
That's
You
right.
know, Manny's third business. Manny's barbecue.
If I wasn't doing this, I would, be an apprentice to Aaron. I would be an apprentice to some kind of like smokehouse and just like open my own smokehouse.
There's
Love it.
isn't there a, I think there's a chef table series that's all about barbecue.
Yes, watch
Okay.
it all
Okay.
throughout. I
All
love
right.
it.
I'll go check it out. And then finally, what is one thing you can't live without in your daily routine?
I really use Perplexity for everything,
Mhm. Same.
and it's such a better experience, and I just became addicted to it. So like I wouldn't know what to do if it wasn't around.
Can you imagine? Like 5 years ago, I think about. I couldn't imagine someone would upend Google, and now it's just for I don't start searches. Same with you.
I
Everything
just, I
starts.
just, I just don't exactly. I just go straight to Perplexity. I get everything that I need. I found out stuff like that I wasn't even aware of. So like, it has this. I don't know why. I don't know if it's design or not, but it has this element of like positive surprise almost every time I use it. So
Yeah,
like now I'm addicted. Like it's very Pavlovian. Like I don't even try something else. I just go for it because I'm expecting that dopamine hit, and it just hits me.
yeah. And finally, how can listeners stay in touch with you and help you on the mission for paid?
Yeah, if you're building an agentic company, if you're building an AI agent, just come to Paid and sign up for the beta list. We'll go. I'll get back to you personally, given that you came through Dog. Matter of fact, mention Dog Camplejohn in the outreach. Say like I heard you through Dog, and then I'll give you the personal treatment.
Manny, always a pleasure seeing you. You look great. I'm
Thank
glad
you. I
London's
appreciate that.
working out for you, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Likewise. Thank you, Dog. That was great.